I'm here today to speak with you about clergy sexual abuse and the resources and counseling that are available for victims in the Archdiocese of Regina. Clergy sexual abuse leaves deep wounds for victims that are often compounded by the betrayal of the Church and a Church community who do not want to acknowledge that abuse has happened and still happens within the Church today. Too many victims have been blamed and shamed when they sought support and healing. This denial continues to harm victims and the Church as a whole. I am pleased to be part of the Regina Archdiocese response to victims, and I'm encouraged in the movement to receive victims in a new way. The policy and procedure for reporting clergy sexual abuse, the creation of a victim services and advocacy role, and the commitment that has been evident to consult with and listen to victims' experiences are all instrumental in changing the culture to one that is victim-centered and trauma-informed. My name is Laurie Harrison, and it is my privilege to speak with you today about clergy sexual abuse and to share how victims and survivors can access confidential counseling services through Heart Song Complex Trauma Program. Clergy sexual abuse includes many forms of trauma that will impact the victim throughout their lifespan. It is obvious to identify sexual abuse as traumatic. More difficult to identify, yet vital to begin to understand, is the trauma of betrayal by someone who should have been trustworthy. Grooming is a process that is used to undermine and exploit the trust of the victim. Too often, victims have been blamed for the abuse, both overtly and subtly. The responsibility for the abuse must sit solely with the abuser. Sexual abuse affects all aspects of a victim's life and relationships. The physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wounds cannot be overlooked. Chronic pain can be a result of the victim's nervous system being in an ongoing stress response of fight or flight. Symptoms of PTSD, including flashbacks, panic, nightmares, anxiety, and depression, are often accompanied by complex and ambivalent emotions. As a result, self-doubt, self-hatred, and shame are often the legacy that victims experience and can be significant barriers to overcome. Developing, building, or rebuilding a sense of spiritual connection after the betrayal of clergy sexual abuse is a daunting task for many. The devastation of this form of trauma is not one to get over because it happened long ago, as so many victims have been told. The process of healing, repair, rebuilding is one that can only happen in a safe, healthy, and supported environment in the present. I'd like to share with you today the idea of institutional courage. This is the institution's commitment to seek the truth and engage in moral action despite unpleasantness, risk, or a short-term cost. Institutional courage is a pledge to protect and care for those who depend upon this institution or the Church. It is a compass oriented to the common good of individuals, institutions, and the world. Receiving victims openly with genuine respect and honest communication is one of the most important things we can do when responding to victims of clergy sexual abuse. There is an incredible and bitter irony that the victim, who was betrayed and abused by someone who should have been safe and often is horribly re-victimized by the Church in coming forward, is the same person who once again is called to trust and develop a connection with another person that will support their healing. If you are the person whom a victim reaches out to, please consider how much they may have needed to overcome in order to do so. Other barriers include clericalism and institutional betrayal. Both are significant factors that have limited victims in coming forward in the past and can do so in the present. As we see here in the description by Pope Francis, clericalism is when clerics feel they are superior and when they are far from the people. Yet, as Pope Francis wrote, clericalism can be fostered by priests themselves or by laypersons. Laypersons can fall into clericalism too. What we see in this definition is that clericalism is a disordered attitude towards clergy, an excessive deference and an assumption of their moral superiority. What this does is increases the degree of power that clergy members have, and when that is abused, it becomes so detrimental to the victims. When this comes forward, we see that clericalism and the desire to protect the church or clergy are significant factors in what is known as institutional betrayal. Institutional betrayal is when an institution, such as the church, fails to prevent or appropriately respond to wrongdoings by individuals. In the instances when individuals have experienced these traumatic events and they have placed a great deal of trust in the church, coming forward they risk disbelief, blame, and the refusal for help. At times, the priorities such as protecting reputations may increase the likelihood that the institution will fail to respond appropriately. It can include taking great lengths to prevent the sexual abuse information from surfacing. And what this does is results in an attempt to silence the individual or the victim who chooses to come forward. A deep lack of validation happens, and the interpersonal trauma of institutional betrayal has been described as a second assault. This can exacerbate the effects of the initial trauma that occurred for the victim. If we are going to change this response, it calls for courage from the institution, the community, and individuals. I am asking you to respond with courage, with kindness, and with compassion. The Archdiocese of Regina has contracted our organization, Heart Song Complex Trauma Program, to provide confidential counseling and support to victims of clergy sexual abuse. Victims are invited to access services directly with myself and are not required to report in order to access counseling. If a victim chooses to report within the Archdiocese at any time, I am available to accompany them. Please know that the costs for counseling are covered by the Archdiocese. There is no fee for a victim to access counseling through Heart Song Complex Trauma Program. If you or someone you know has experienced clergy sexual abuse, please reach out. Counseling is available in a variety of formats. I invite you to call or email me. I would be happy to meet with you and to support you in your process of recovering or healing from the betrayal and trauma of clergy sexual abuse. Thank you.